All right, I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides by the Nebraska Open Meetings Act of conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording processes is posted in the meeting room. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Kaler.
Here.
Coulterman.
Here.
Tanyas.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Wergen.
Here.
Wilkin.
Here.
All right, our consent agenda consists of the first 3 items this evening.
Move approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor: Wilkin, Kaler, Tanyas, Coulterman, Singleton, Wergen, 6-0.
All right. Next, we have mayor's appointment of city employee. We have with us this evening Brandon Cole, his appointment to serve as the wastewater director. Greg?
Yeah, after kind of an extensive process, as we all are well aware, with the passing of Tim Richtig, we undertook an open process to go out and try to find someone to replace him, both looking internally and externally. Thanks to Derek and all his efforts, as well as Gary in keeping things going. We sent out letters to some targeted people as well, because we knew with the certifications that are required to operate a facility such as the ones we have with the water treatment plant and the wastewater plant, that we were going to need very specific qualifications. Luckily enough, Brandon was one of the ones that answered the call and worked through the process with a few others. And I'll let him speak more about himself, but he comes to us from Crete, has a very extensive background, and the number one that we are really lucked out with is he has experience in working through the process of design and construction of an SPR wastewater treatment plant, which is exactly the path that we're on at the moment. So, Brandon, if you want to come up and introduce yourself.
Well, first off, I can't express how excited I am for the new challenge starting next week. Secondly, because I like to sleep indoors, I'd like to introduce my better half, Robin Krivolov, of 20 years. I've been in the wastewater business with the City of Crete since 2010, been the superintendent since 2012. Our design began in 2014 for our SBR plant that opened in 2016. That was about a $12.5 million project. I've been from the first shovelful of dirt and up until this coming Friday, I've been there. A little bit about me: I'm a fishing nut, and times 10. I like to do some barbecuing. I like other outdoor activities, hang with my friends and family. I don't like to tout myself too much, but I'm totally excited to work as part of the Seward community. So we live in Dorchester. So you guys are ever down for City Slickers for wings? We're on the southeast corner of the 4-way stop. Stop in and say hi if I'm out mowing my grass or something. Wave all the way back. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are, as everyone knows, it's been difficult. Everyone's having a hard time hiring employees, and so we're just very fortunate to have someone like Brandon with his expertise, and specifically in what we're looking to do, because it is such a large project for the city. We want to give ourselves every opportunity to do it right. So, I'm really excited to appoint Brandon, and I hope for the council's approval. Did you want to say anything else, Brandon?
No, just can't wait to get ready to get started. So.
Any questions from the council?
I'll just note we're not very high on the Christmas card list for the city of Crete right now. Just saying. I had a great conversation with Tom, my fellow city administrator down there, and he was very, had great candidacy and candor with me to the first time I called him, I think Brandon was literally at his office, and the staff member said, "He's busy right now. He's talking to your new employee." She had no clue who I was. I thought that was hilarious. But no, we're really excited to have Brandon, and he comes highly recommended, and I think it's a big step for us and a big step for him.
So with that, it's my appointment.
So we make a motion.
You need a motion to, I'll move to approve the appointment.
Your motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Kaler, Tanya, Coulterman, Singleton, Worthing, 6-0.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys.
Congrats.
Welcome.
See you next week.
Yep, see you bright and early Monday morning.
And
Have a
just so
good evening,
everyone,
all.
and just so everyone knows
Nice
procedurally,
meeting all.
there will be a swearing in for these positions that are appointed, but they'll take care of it at City Hall. So,
Fantastic.
so watch your social media accounts, 'cause I'm sure there'll be pictures.
Mindy will get
See
pictures.
you tomorrow.
I have 0 social media accounts. Thanks a lot.
You bet, thank you.
Have a good day.
Good evening.
All right, next we have administrative items. The first item is a presentation and acceptance of the 2021-2022 annual audit. I think we have Marcy Lou with us, and Greg, would you want?
I'll kick this over to Nick. As he stated, we have Marcy with us again this year. Her staff came down and worked with Nick and all of City Hall and did an incredible job. And so, Nick, if you want to introduce Marcy, and then we'll turn it over to her.
Absolutely. We have Marcy Luth here with us on Zoom, and she has a presentation to give on their audit report that they issued here. So we'll turn it over to you, Marcy.
Okay, thanks, Nick. And yes, the audit went very smoothly this year, and that's in large part thanks to Nick and his staff. They're doing a fabulous job of keeping you guys' financial records up to date. And as we go through the audit tonight, just feel free if you have questions to jump in. Nick can give me the sign and shut me off if someone has a question. Nick, is the volume coming through okay there so people can hear?
Greg, do you think?
I'm gonna keep messing with it, but I won't turn you off.
We can hear her though.
Doing pretty good, so.
Okay, very good, very good. So there's a couple of things that you guys have, and one is the Big Bound Audit Report, which is about 80 or 90 pages. We like to focus on instead a 2-page benchmarking spreadsheet. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about the Bound Audit Report, but this 2-page spreadsheet that I'm going to refer to has about 12 ratios, which really summarize the key information out of the audit. There are page numbers on that report that refer you back into the Bound Audit Report. And so I think these 12 ratios really help you compare this year to the prior 5 years, because there's a 5-year trend analysis on this spreadsheet. And then also there's a recommended or a peer group column. So you can see how you compare to other cities your size, or on some of the ratios, what our recommended levels are in order to have adequate reserves and adequate liquidity. So starting out with the first item there, you can see your valuation for 2022 came in about $10,000 higher per capita compared to your peer group. And so these are other communities your size across the state of Nebraska. You can see that valuation is up this year compared to the prior year by about $4,000 per capita. The first ratio we have is unrestricted net position compared to total net position. And when we say unrestricted, we mean it's not tied up in capital assets or restricted by donors or grantors for some purpose. And so here we see that we would recommend somewhere between 25 and 40% for unrestricted net position, depending upon what funds we're talking about. And you can see that for you guys, you're a little bit below that in all categories. But you've been consistent in that level for the last couple of years. So just an area that you don't have a lot of excess unrestricted, but you are right there, fairly close to the benchmark.
In
again,
your
look back
packet,
5 years,
this is page
you see a lot of
97 of 144.
comparability or a lot of consistency there. As you compare to your peers, this one's a little bit difficult because it depends upon the priorities in a community. All communities differ. You also differ regarding your level of staffing for police and fire and different things. But it's just a benchmark to compare to. There's no right or wrong that says if you're higher or lower than the average communities your size that you're right or wrong. But I think the important thing here is the 5-year trend so you can see your dollars per capita. Item number 5 looks at your outstanding GO debt compared to overall valuation. Anything less than 3% is excellent in that you have adequate resources to service your GO debt. And you can see you're at 0.91, so you're in that excellent range. As we flip to the second page, we've got the unbalanced, or excuse me, the unassigned fund balance compared to total general fund expenditures. So this tells us, based on the amount you spend in your general fund, how much do you have in unassigned equity in that same fund? We recommend having at least 30%, and you can see that you guys are right at about 75%. So you've got some solid unassigned fund balance for the general fund itself. Number 7 looks at the months of cash you have in your street fund. And we like to see that turning, so we like to see that stay below that 12 months worth. And that simply tells us that you're putting the dollars back into street projects in your community. And you can see that this year you guys came in at about 10 months. So you're right there where we want to be. It's telling us that you're taking your highway allocation and your state dollars and you're rolling them back into the street projects as the state intends those funds to be used. Item number 8 looks at your levy rates. Again here, if you look back historically, you can see you guys are at the 0.318 for your general fund levy. And you can see compared to the peer average, that's about 0.62 less than the peer average. And that's where you guys are lower as far as tax asking, so you don't have that municipal equalization. There's a tipping point at which municipal equalization kicks in, and that's why yours is fairly low. Item number 9 is looking at how depreciated out your capital assets are. We like to see you stay above 35% of original cost in your net capital assets. If we fall below that, it tells us there's going to be some pretty significant capital investment that's required in the near term. And you can see that for both your governmental and your business type, you guys are over that 35% mark. So you're in good shape. You've reinvested dollars into those plant and infrastructure assets. Item number 10, we're looking at operating income. So for your utilities, the target is about a 15% operating income. And this is simply to enable you to continue having the cash flow you need for future capital replacements. And you can see that you're right there. The electric fund is a little bit light at 10% compared to that 15. You can see the electric fund has come up if you look back over the last 5 years, but just something you want to look at to make sure that we maintain adequate cash reserves in that fund. Item number 11 looks at debt coverage ratios for your utility funds. We like to see that stay above 1.5 in order to have adequate cash flow to service your debt. You can see in all 3 utilities, you guys are well above that. And then finally, number 12, we're looking at cash reserves. And there's a couple of things we look at when we build this. One is, how much does your operating expenses run for the year in these various funds? And 2, do we expect you to have large capital expenditures in the near term based on the ratios we looked at under number 9? And you can see that under our formula, we'd like to see you have at least 2.4 million in the general fund, and you're sitting at about 3.9. So you've got good cash reserves in the general fund. This is an issue that a lot of communities really struggle with. So you guys have done a good job of building and maintaining governmental and general fund cash reserves. And then you can see under your business type that you've got about 11.7 million in cash reserves, and we'd like to see that be about 12.2, because we know there will be some capital investment that's going to be required in the near term, and so that's why those dollars are pretty high. But you're in good financial shape. You're fairly close. Just something you want to continue to monitor, that operating income, and make sure that we're this audit reflects. The next several pages, the management discussion and analysis, is just kind of a narrative format that talks about the city and key financial information for this past year. And on page 8, there's actually a comparison of assets, liabilities, and net position or equity compared to the prior year. And here you can see that your total assets increased over the prior year, your total liabilities decreased, and your total net position increased. So all three of those categories are trending in what we would say is the right direction. Assets and equity up, liabilities down. Page 9 is a comparison of governmental revenues and expenses compared to the prior year. And here you can see a lot of comparability. Program revenues, you can see decreased about $366,000 over last year. And it's going to be primarily due to, if you look at the bottom table, the third line, capital grants and contributions. You can see that was down about $500,000 from the prior year. That's going to vary from year to year, depending upon what projects you have going on in town. This year just happened to be a little bit lower year as far as capital grants. But you'll also notice on that bottom table, you see charges for services were up, property taxes, sales tax, franchise tax, and tip proceeds all increased. So all those governmental revenues are pretty much trending upward. Page 10 gives you similar information for your utility fund. So here you see in the top table, your program revenue increased about $750,000. Meanwhile, your expenses for utilities increased about $400,000. So the revenue outpaced expenses this year. On page 11 and 12, we've got some of the larger capital asset investments that you made during this past year. So you can see those larger projects that you invested your dollars back into the plant. And at the bottom of page 12, we've got the summarization of the debt. So for both the governmental and the utilities, you can see the total debt came in at $13.2 million. That compared to $15.3 million a year ago. So your debt decreased a little over $2 million, or about 13%, because you're making those scheduled principal payments. There really wasn't due debt that was issued during this past year. From there, I'm going to jump back to 14, and on 14, we get into the main body of the financial statement. And just the way these audit reports lay out, we look at governmental, business type, of course, are your utilities, and then the component unit column that's over there is the Airport Authority and the Library Foundation. Those two are reported over as component units. There's a roll-up schedule clear in the back. Page 15 is this governmental view that looks at your expenses by function, first of all, and then any direct revenue sources get subtracted off of that. And it brings you over on the right-hand side of the page to total. And so you can see for your governmental activities, that total is a negative $4.6 million, almost $4.7 million. So these are your governmental expenses that you did not have direct grants or charges for services to support them. And then really, that is what property taxes, sales tax, franchise tax, and your state allocation go to cover. And so those revenues are reported at the bottom of that right-hand side of the page. A couple of other key things that we like to look at on the financials. On page 16, we've got your governmental fund statements. And I think it's always important to note, we a lot of times think in terms of cash. You know, how much cash do I have in the general fund? But it's important from the governmental standpoint to think about, are there any restrictions, commitments, or assignments of that cash? And what does that leave for unassigned cash or fund balance? And that's presented down at the bottom of that page under the fund balance section. So I think it's always important to remember that. A lot of funds are restricted, can only be used for certain purposes. Even the general fund has some dollars that are committed for public safety and sports complex, or it might be assigned for budgetary stabilization. So it's always important to reconcile those two things and remember what you have for unassigned cash that can be really used in more of a liquid or flexible manner as projects do come up. Also on page 16, if we look at that other governmental funds column, there are 4 smaller funds that get rolled up. The detail of those are back on page 69. Page 18 shows your revenues and your expenses for your general fund. And here, if you look third line from the bottom, you see your general fund this year, $718,000. Okay, so if we jump ahead to the utilities, I'm going to move us to page 21. And on page 21, in the center of the page, that operating income is where we were targeting a 15% ratio. And so for your water and sewer fund, you remember, you were at or above that 15%. For the electric fund, we were about 10% of revenue. So that's kind of our target over the long term. We like to see that hit that 15% mark to maintain adequate cash reserves and build for the future. The cash for the utilities is shown on page 22, or the cash flow fund. And if you just look at the totals, clear over to the right-hand side, look at your subtotals. So your utilities brought in $4.8 million from operating the system. Then in the next subtotal, you used about $3.1 million in capital and related financing. And that's primarily $2.6 million invested in capital asset purchases, $960,000 invested in paying down debt. Okay? And then cash flow from investing, you had positive $50,000, primarily interest income that came in. So overall, your utility cash was up $1.8 million. We're going to jump way ahead now to page 42. I'm moving through some of the accounting policies and things that don't change a great deal from year to year. But as we get back to page 42, you'll see the total cash is broken down there. Now this includes the two component units that I talked about. But including those two component units, you had about $24 million worth of cash for the city funds. Okay? Jumping ahead a few more, pages 45 and 46 detail out the LBA 40 loans that are outstanding at September 30th. Those total $750,000, as you can see at the bottom of page 46. And then capital assets. I mentioned earlier that this year for your governmental funds, you invested more, then depreciation took that down. That's reflected in the additions column on page 47. You can see 1.2 million is what the net capital assets increase for your governmental activities. And for the business type activities on page 49, a positive $1,039,000. So again, investment in capital outpaced depreciation this year. Your debt is shown on page 51. As I mentioned earlier, there was no new long-term debt that was issued. You just made your scheduled principal payments. And the various debt issues are detailed out on the next several pages. But if you move back to page 57, you can see the principal and interest requirements that you'll have over each of the next 5 years, and then in 5-year increments thereafter. So this is just a nice place to plan for some of that cash flow that's going to be required to service principal and interest on your debt. Okay, from there, we're going to jump ahead a few more pages. Page 59 details out the CDs that you had in place at year end. And so they had various maturity dates that are reflected on page 59, the $5.5 million in certificates of deposit. The financial institutions holding those are shown on page 60. So that 5.5 was held at 3 different banks. Your contractual commitments are shown at the bottom of page 60. And then, excuse me. The TIP projects are shown on page 63. Continuing on to page 64. On page 69, excuse me, I think I've been talking too much today. We've got your non-major funds listed there. Those continue on to page 70 with the revenues and expenses for those non-major funds. And then the component units are shown on pages 70 and 72. You can see the detail of your airport authority and your library foundation. The final couple of pages in the bound audit report are the internal control and the compliance report. required report that we put in each year. And we always remind you that there is a lack of segregation of duties. So, you know, in your organization, there's a limited number of people that handle the financial records. And so it's important that you guys as council members, as you're approving claims, as you're reviewing financial reports, just ask the questions that come to mind, because that does help. Having those extra sets of eyes, having people that are monitoring the financials, just that helps with the segregation of duties. So please take those rules, seriously as you do it, because that is an important role that you serve. I'm going to pause there and see, are there any questions on any of the things we've covered thus far?
And you can communicate your question, and then Nick can repeat it to Marcy. But
Do we have any questions at this time? Not seeing any right now, Marcy.
Okay, there was one other letter that we issued, and do they have copies of our letter of comments, Nick?
They all have electronic copies, and
Yep.
some have paper as well, so.
Super, super. So the letter I'm referring to, you know, we as auditors have required communication that we have to provide to you guys. And it's usually kind of in the same order, no matter what auditing firm that would provide this. But basically, it talks about your accounting policies on the first page. The second page lists the audit adjustments that we propose. So it just details out the larger entries that were made. A lot of these are adjusting depreciation, debt, things like that. And they are routinely the entries that are made to convert the cash basis financial statements into the accrual basis, primarily for the utility funds. So that's usually where we see the larger dollars that are adjusted. Rents receivable can be a large adjustment from year to year, but there was nothing out of the ordinary in the audit adjustments. And then just the recommendations that we had on the third page of that letter are a couple that we've had before, and as auditors, you know, I think you guys have looked at a lot of things as Nick's come in and looked at charts of accounts and how you might want to do some things. Your financials are a little bit difficult because they kind of all run together. The funds have kind of all run together through the years. We're able to separate those out when we come in and audit just due to past history, which makes it a little bit easier, but a chart of accounts that was specific by fund would definitely be a recommendation if you were looking at, if Nick wasn't there and we weren't there, this could be a lot more difficult process. So something to maybe build for the future, just to make it a little bit easier, that anyone can walk in and pick up and understand what your chart of accounts says. So that's what we're recommending there if you were ever looking to do a project like that. But again, I think, the financials are going very well within your organization, and we do really appreciate the effort that Nick and his staff put in to prepare for the audit and to get us all the information we need and the information that we asked for. So thank you, Nick.
Absolutely, and I want to say thank you, Marcy. We always enjoy working with your staff, and we always feel like we get a quality, honest product from you guys.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions at this time? Or Greg, do you have any follow-up items?
I would just thank Marcy again and thank Nick and the whole staff at City Hall. It's a big undertaking that they've really fine-tuned to make themselves available throughout the days that the auditors are here and available, and the follow-up items. And Nick leads that crew along with Julie and does an incredible job. As I think you can see from the reports you guys get, we take the finances of the city incredibly seriously. We want to do what's in the best interest of the ratepayers and the taxpayers and the citizens of Seward. We've seen how it can go bad in other communities, and so we always want to do our best to be as diligent as possible with these funds that we're entrusted with. I can't speak enough to how highly important it is to the community to have the council create the finance director position for such a small community and entrust it to Nick. It really helps us out significantly in ensuring that we're being on top of the issues that we're facing from year to year on the financial side. So thank you, Nick, and your crew.
Thank you so much, Marcy.
Thank
Hey.
you, you guys have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Nice job,
Thank
Nick.
you.
And just to kind of dovetail on what Greg said, you know, over the last, so many years, we've been trying to professionalize City Hall as much as possible. And it's tough when you're our size because we tend to be big enough to have needs, but not big enough necessarily to justify a full-time position. And so sometimes you have hybrid positions trying to cover different duties and responsibilities, but you know, bringing Mike on as our city engineer was a big part of that, as well as say Wolf. Sorry, Nick.
That works, Mr. Wolf.
Mr. Wolf. We brought in the wolf for this. And so, as we just continue to work towards that goal, you know, we've been fortunate enough to be able to have the support of the council to create those positions, as well as filling them with quality individuals. So, again, thank you for all the work you've done on this. Anything else, Greg?
No, I think if there's no other questions, it'd just be a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the report.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Kaler, Tanya's, Coulterman, Singleton, Morgan, 6-0.
All right, item number 2, consideration of approval of service provider agreement with Cassell Inc. for provision of accounting and utility software.
This is Nick too.
This is awesome, Nick.
Right, if I just jump right in?
Yep,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Alright, I guess I'll start off by introducing myself, because there are some new names on the council from when I was here for the budget. I'm Nick Wolf, the finance director with the city. I'll try to make this brief. This is exciting to me because I'm an accountant. It's not probably gonna be exciting to most other people, and so I'll try to make it brief, but
We'll
wanna
try to
cover
get
some
excited for you,
information.
okay?
So, the purpose of this presentation is to review our search for new accounting software, to discuss the software that we want to convert to, answer any of your questions, and then ask that you approve us moving forward with this contract with Cassell. Our search started for the accounting software based off several recommendations from our auditors, which actually happen to be the two that she also just included in her presentation. Those have been there since they started auditing us. They've been the same recommendations, and those recommendations were to update the chart of accounts and then operate on a true fund accounting system. And so we've kind of been toying with the idea of doing this, and we thought rather than do this in our normal course, we have basically two major transitions where we switch to the new chart of accounts and fund accounting, and then another transition where we switch to a new software. We thought it probably makes sense to do it all in one transition. And so kind of the culmination of our efforts. And then also, we've kind of been considering updating our software for a number of years because our current software seems out of date, feels like we're underutilizing it. We don't have it set up in ways that we can utilize it to make our lives easier and more efficient. The support is lacking. When we call in with a ticket for support items, whatever it might be, if we're having an issue, there's been multiple issues there. And ultimately, we were notified that the way our software is right now, they're going to end support for this software in the current state. And so basically they're forcing us to, ultimately we're gonna have to jump to something else that they are currently creating if we were to do nothing. And so we kind of thought, well, let's start looking now and see what options are out there. And we researched several options. We briefly looked at Power Manager and Banyan softwares, and they didn't really fit the bill as far as what we needed in a software and for our size of city and all the things we have going on. We also looked at GWorks, is who we're currently with, their Simple City software, and they are creating a new cloud-based software, and we did demos with them, and then finally we also did demos with Cassell, which is the contract that we're presenting to you tonight. I first reached out to Cassell on May 3rd, 2022, and we had multiple remote demos with all of our accounting staff. We brought Emily in to look at the payroll part of it. We brought Kirsten in to look at utility billing. Julie joined us for the accounts payable and some of the financial pieces. And so we were able to get everybody involved with the process. Then in November of 22, we had all the staff join in for actual in-person demo. They flew a couple of their staff members out from Provo, Utah, which is where the company's based, and they were able to go through it in detail with us, and everybody was able to join for some portion of that. I think we were all fairly excited, or at least I was excited, but everybody thought that it would be an improvement for the city. Since then, I've emailed and received good reviews from the finance directors at Papillion, Ralston, and Holdridge, Nebraska. I spoke directly with the finance directors at Beatrice and Crete, and got good reviews from them. Crete actually just transitioned to Cassell in 2020, so I was able to ask them about how their implementation process went. And then they also worked with Wahoo, Gothenburg, Sydney, Alliance, and Hemingford, Nebraska. And so, even though they're in Utah, they do have a pretty good presence. And then, if anybody was curious, I didn't actually call up to Seward, Alaska, but they got a pin mark there in the Gulf of Alaska that it might be. It's right there. It really could be, but I didn't call them.
Well, it is our sister site.
Yeah,
I mean,
they'll get confused.
They're using it all across the country. It's a pretty popular software. So Cassell has two offerings. They have a hosted or cloud-based version, and then they have a server solution. We're interested in the hosted version. The hosted version is less expensive up front. There's accessibility outside the office. So in the event of a pandemic, or even just, hey, for what circumstances might come up where you would need to work remote or anything like that, as long as you have a good, reliable internet connection, you can access the software and work. So, also another benefit is that Cassell is responsible for all the data. They have 2 data centers. I believe it's Microsoft Azure that they work with. That they have a data center in Nebraska, and it's my understanding, and then also in Texas. So they're storing all the data for us. It's not located here. So. Kind of the things that we're really excited about is they have great reporting with accounting data. They can link accounting data into an Excel spreadsheet. The accounting data is updated in our system. It also updates the Excel spreadsheet. So that we felt that could be very useful for our procedures. They also have an integrated document management software. So if I'm running accounts payable and I have a check, I can scan an invoice in and attach it to that check in the accounting software. So then in 3 years when I'm like, hey, what was this check for? I can go and look at that specific invoice, click on the link and pull up the PDF and see that invoice, which for me I thought would be helpful for us internally, but then also like in instances with our audit where they come and they say, hey, we want these 5,000 invoices and we got to go rifle through and pull them all out and everything. We can give them view-only access. They can go in there, look at the invoices they want to. At least that's what we're hoping they're willing to do. And and then they can view all of them and utilize that system. They have an intuitive platform. It includes checklists for each process. So, for instance, payroll. They will help us tailor a checklist within the software where Emily can go through and she can, check. Oh, we got through timesheets and each step of her process in processing payroll. So it's all right there. I think it would be good for if there's ever a transition within the city and you have a new employee come in, all that information is right there in the software, and they're gonna be helping us update it as we go if our procedures change, so. Access for employees, so employees will have a login where they can go in and log in. So kind of your frontline employees would be able to log in, see their timesheets, clock in, clock out. They'd also be able to see some of their payroll information historically, and W-2s and benefit information and stuff like that. Department head will be able to log in, and they'll be able to see all that information, but then also be able to see some budgeting information, like we could send them the budget electronically, they could fill it out and submit it back to administration. And they'd also potentially, we could set it up so that they could approve claims electronically through the software as well, so they'd have a set level of security where they could do certain things, and then it would come back to City Hall. And then of course the accounting staff at City Hall then would have access to the full gamut. Their customer service and support has had good reviews. We feel that their pricing is competitive. We have a sheet we'll go over here, which is the last part of my presentation. They serve 1,300 municipalities as customers. And the last item here I wanted to talk about was kind of their target size. And we talked about the size of our city in Marcy's presentation. And our understanding and the information we've got from our current software provider and then Cassell, we understand that with G-Works, we're one of their larger customers versus Cassell, we would be on the smaller end of their target size customer. And we felt that that's a benefit to the city in that as the city continues to grow, we feel that they could handle anything we can throw at them. And if there's something that's been done at a larger city, and we ultimately the city decides, hey, this is something we're gonna do, then we would feel comfortable in that they can already handle it because they probably experienced it at one of their other customers. So with that, then the other part of it is our sheet that I handed out, which is it's just a real basic comparison of the quotes that we got. You have the Cassell hosted, Cassell server, the current Simple City, which is not a long-term option. That's probably only going to be available to us for a couple, 2, 3, 4 years at the most. And then Simple City, their cloud software. And so they have the implementation costs and then what their annual fees would be. And then I just showed what it would be over the next 11 years. And obviously there's inflation and stuff, we can't predict all that, so we just projected it straight out from the numbers that we have. And so I highlighted a few numbers there. In year 5, you can see that if we went with the hosted version, we would essentially be spending the same amount of money as of year 5 as we would if we went to Simple City G-Works new software. By year 11, we would have saved $55,000. And so then also comparing the hosted version of Cassell versus the server version of Cassell. So the server version, they would install software on our server, and there would be a lot larger cost up front, but then over time you would save money. Well, we felt that the way things are going, it makes sense to be in a cloud-based environment because, for instance, what we experienced with the pandemic and just the way everything is going nowadays, it seems like to have that ability, it makes sense just to jump right into it at this time. And within 10 years, we would kind of anticipate probably having to go to something like that anyway. G-Works is actually basically eventually going to kick everyone out of their current software, which is a server-based software, into their new cloud-based software. So it's kind of the way that everything's going these days. So we figured we'd just kind of hopefully jump right into it. G-Works, as we talked to them and kind of let them know that we were looking at other softwares as well, they said, well, hey, we can do a redeployment of your current software where we fix your chart of accounts and do some of these items that you're wanting to accomplish, and we'll do that at no cost. They also gave us some discounts on the upfront implementation costs. Well, we were really excited. We did demos of G-Works and we did demos of Cassell, and we were really excited with Cassell. And so we went back to Cassell and said, hey, G-Works is offering these discounts. We really like your software though. Is there anything you can do? And they actually knocked another $5,000 off the upfront cost, and then they took off $398 a month for the first 3 years, which totaled out to like $14,000 over 3 years. And we could lock in for a 3-year, lock into that monthly rate for 3 years. So we would know that wouldn't go up for at least the first 3 years. So felt like they were very responsive. At this time, if you should approve the contract, there would be a 50% down payment of $23,000, $23,248, and we have budgeted this current year of $30,000 specifically for this upgrade. So then, moving forward, then if we pay the down payment now, that gets us on the list to start the implementation. Basically, a year from now, we would pay the other half, and then they would start collecting all of our accounting data, all of our information, and then plugging it all in, building our file, and then in about 6 months after that, then we would actually implement and go live with the new software. So there would be various parts where they'd be waiting on us, they'd give us information or request information, we'd gather it all up and send it back to them. So part of it's timing as far as how fast we can get stuff back to them. But I guess that's my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and ask that you approve this contract.
So our contract, obviously with Simple City or G-Works, how long is that one? Is that one then?
So G-Works actually does our GIS and our Simple City. I believe G-Works is the GIS is on the last year, but the Simple City we've been paying on a year-to-year basis, so we pay a year in advance. So currently we're paid up through the end of this fiscal year.
So we wouldn't owe them any fees to get out of the contract, we just time it, hopefully.
Yep. And to be honest, we'd probably pay, at least an extra year, just to make sure that we had all of our data and had access to information, if anything needed to get transitioned over, or if we ran into any snags in the implementation. But yeah, from our review, we did not see any issues with getting out of it at the end of the fiscal year. So
I assume that we had legal counsel review the actual contract?
Yes, Kelly, the only change Kelly had was he changed the state in which the law would be interpreted under from Utah to Nebraska. That was it.
Great plan, okay.
And they did allow it. So we got the new contracts back with those changes.
Did you have any reservations or concerns, or is this you feel really comfortable with it?
yeah, I really think it'll be good for the city and for the staff. I think everybody's, they're probably not as excited as I am about it, but and it's like anything. It's like doing something like this is a huge undertaking, and it's going to be a lot of work.
Change is hard.
Yeah, and just in that factor alone, but there's so many things that we, worksheets and cheat sheets we use. How do you code stuff? It's going to have to change literally all that stuff, and so it's going to affect everybody. All the department heads are going to have to learn what account codes to code stuff to again. So yeah, it's pretty big, but we're excited about it. I'm excited about it. I think that Cassell, based off, everything we've seen, and everybody's been a part of it, everybody's seen it, and I think we're all really, think that it would be a good option for us.
Rich,
When I was looking through this, first of all, nice job, you dug real deep. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. And I know whenever you make a move like this from one plant to another, the compatibility, the integration, the training for your own employees and all that, you've looked at much of that, haven't you?
Yep.
And I also know that when you start to implement the changes, things pop up that you hadn't anticipated. So was there any thought or any discussion about what happens if the conversion over to the new program doesn't run as smoothly as they intended at the beginning? Is there a plan in place on what to do and following up with that?
So, I think that, basically, and this kind of speaks to, or it goes to what we talked about continuing to keep our current software running. I don't know, we hadn't dug in specifically if we would basically do a double accounting of it, you know, account for it in the old system and the new system for a period of time. It's something that we've considered and talked about. That'd be a lot of work too,
It's a lot of work.
You know, it's probably kind of one of those things that as we would get to that point, we'd look at, you know, maybe some other cities, but we haven't dug into that aspect too much, but.
And how committed are they to making this transition as easy as they can for your staff? Because, as you said, there could be problems that pop up, and getting somebody to fly out here from Utah and meet with you or help provide the training necessary for your employees is something that needs to be put up front.
Sure,
Makes sense.
absolutely. Yep, so they offer both, training and implementation services where they come out and they set up, so part of it will be in person, they'll be here on site setting up. They also offer training, they can do all of it here, if they want to, or if we want them to. Now it costs a little bit more to have them out there to do all of it here. So, they do like to have some of the training done in Provo, Utah. So there would be probably some travel costs if that's the route that the city ultimately wanted to go for training. Outside of that, the actual training itself would be included in this cost. Yeah, I guess, they have, I don't think I have that breakdown with me. I was trying to think, they had a breakdown, basically, right now they have, I don't think I have it. They have about 100 employees, and 25 of the employees are support, and 25 of them are in the implementation process. So they definitely